Hello and welcome to the Srijan Wednesday webinars. If you're joining us for the first time, this is a community initiative by Srijan Technologies where you can tune into some great sessions on topics ranging from front-end technologies, UI UX, mobile apps, to media, entrepreneurship, community building, and digital marketing. Today's webinar is our second look at the Drupal console. Enzo is taking us through the console and sharing some pro tips on how you can learn Drupal 8 better and make your development process much faster. You all would know Enzo from his recent Drupal tour, participating in community events across Asia and Australia. He spoke at the Drupal Camp Manila and also participated in a DrupalCon and several other community initiatives throughout his tour. He is also the founder and CTO of Annexus and the co-maintainer of the Drupal Console project. Thanks for joining us today, Enzo. Before we start with the session, I would request all participants to please type in any questions that you have during the presentation, and we'll take them up in the last 15 minutes of this session. Also, please don't forget to take this conversation live on Twitter using our hashtag SrijanWW. You can share your thoughts by tagging us and Enzo in your tweets using our handles @Srijan and @Enzolutions. So without wasting any more time, let's just dive into this webinar. Enzo, over to you.
Hi everybody, thank you for Srijan Technologies to invite me to this webinar. Okay, let's go to the point. So as I just said, I am going to have the second session in Srijan Technologies about Drupal Console, and today is a continuation from the first one. This segment was led by Jesus Olivas. A little, nothing too much to say about me, so I am working on Access as a CTO. Maybe you could pay attention about those links. So if you want to read these slides online, this is the URL to follow. And here in this session, I will follow a script. So later you can check this video, see the slides, and follow the script in order to reproduce what I am doing here. Okay, so the Drupal console, those guys, including me, we are the co-maintainers. David Flores, Jesus Olivas, and Omar Aguirre, they are from Mexico, and I am from Colombia, living in Costa Rica. So my Twitter handle is Enzolutions, so you could find me this in GitHub, Twitter, and all social networks. So Drupal console is possible because those companies, they invest their time, office hours to contribute in this project. FFW, Annexus, my own company, and Endava, a Drupal workshop located in Mexico. It's important for us, if you like the Drupal console, you can use the hashtag Drupal console, and we have a Twitter account at Drupal console if you want to get in contact with us for any improvement or any questions you have about this. So let me go with this. So if you are interested in learning about Drupal console, we have a website, drupalconsole.com. Right now we have, you see, more than 126K downloads, and we are running in our 1.0 beta 2. Also, if you want to read more specific documentation about our project, you could read online all this documentation in English. But the good thing is the documentation is also available in other languages. For Indian people, for instance, we have not 100% translated, but it is almost 55% translated to Hindi. So maybe this could be important for your people. Okay, let's back to the presentation. If you require some kind of support, we have an open room where you could ask us any problems or issues or suggestions you have about the Drupal console. All you need is a GitHub account, and then you are in contact with all the people in the community. Usually we are 300 people in the room, and sometimes people provide support, not only the maintainers. Okay. So in this session I will be a little more advanced than the previous session, but if you want to start from the beginning, there is a video where you can follow in the previous seminar. This is Drupal Console 101. I will skip the subject as usually was covered before, but this is like a continuation for this. Okay, so in general, Drupal Console, we support remote commands. All you need is Drupal Console installed in a remote server. Could be a virtual machine, for instance. And we support multi-site, and we support autocomplete in our commands, as well accurate desktop installations. Some tips before to start. First, you need to set up the Drupal Console in your language. You just need to install Drupal Console and modify the console slash config YAML file and set up your language. So, for instance, the image is the output for Drupal Console running in Spanish. We support a lot of languages like Hindi, Hungarian, Portuguese, Brazil, Romanian, and Chinese simplified. Pro tip number 2 is generating line. So anytime you execute a command and you want to maybe to reuse or re-execute this command for you or for your friends, you just include an extra action dash generate dash inline and execute the command normally, and at the end you want to re-execute the command using all the options you provide. So this is useful to create like a common command you execute and to reduce the typing. Pro tip number 3 is we have another action is generate change. This is a Drupal console. I will cover later, but it's the same concept. You include the action dash generate dash change, and at the end you will get a YAML representation about the command you just execute. We will cover this later. So about languages, this is a snapshot about the current status of languages translation. So as you could see, the top 5 is Spanish, Chinese, Hindi, Catalan, and Hungarian. But we have some level of cover in other languages. This is another way to contribute to this project if you are interested. And for Indian people, we are started with Gujarati, I guess, and another language, Punjabi, PA. This is still in progress. Okay, let's go to material. So let's talk about configuration management, because this is one of the most important things in Drupal 8, because that allows to send you configuration in your site into production. So first, let me go to my Drupal 8 install. It's a clear install, so I am running Drupal server. This is a built-in server in PHP, so that means you don't need a virtual host or a map or something. And you can use this server using a SQLite database, MySQL, or Progress. So this is the most recent Drupal 8 version running with the PHP built-in installation. If we see the logs, we see all the files were loaded. Okay, let's back here. And as I said before, I will follow this script. So the first thing we need to do is create a model. In this case, I will open a second tab in the same folder, and I am going. Sorry, oops, you maybe copy too much. Let me edit in raw. Maybe it's easy. Okay. So I am going to create a module for Royal Challengers. I heard this is a good team of cricket in India. As you see, I get 3 new files. If I open in an editor, now you will see I have a Royal Challengers. I get a composer file, an info file, and a model file. If I go to the Drupal installation in STEM, I will see in the FAA a Royal Challenger file. Okay? I could install and everything. But I say we are going to talk about configuration management. So the first thing you need to know about configuration management is we have a way to list all our configuration. If I run Drupal config debug, I will get all the keys we have in terms of configuration. So in a standard Drupal 8, we have 174 configurations. If I want to debug one of them, I just need to use the configuration, the key of the configuration. In this moment, I am showing the system side. We have commands to export all of configuration. So I say config export, and now inside the default files, a random name sync, I exported all configuration. If I run, for instance, sites, sync, I say ls size, you see we have a YAML file 1 for each entry in the debug command. If I want to modify, for instance, one entry in one configuration file, I could say I want to modify the email. I could provide the value in line. If I don't provide, I could just change here with my email in Nexus, and I get the old value and original value, the original value and the new value. If I go to specific configuration in site settings, then you will get the change, right? Okay, so if I want to debug just that specific to see the change, I see the change. And more important, now I have this comment. So imagine you are developing and you are touching many configurations in your website, and you want to push these changes in production, but you don't know what files you need to modify. At the first time, I run an export. And now with the config diff, we could determine what entries are changing between our current status and the previous export. So in secret, we could have more than one folder, so we can create like a one synchronized folder for one feature we are working. So in that way, we could determine what files we need to commit to Git and then pull in our server. Synchronize in our server. We have commands for all of this process. We have commands for all of this process. If you want to check all the commands related with configuration, just run Drupal list config, and you will see we have command to import a configuration, import a full set of folders. We could debug settings and everything. But maybe a more interesting approach could be create some kind of features. So let me do this. If I am going to content types, I will do something that is really normal in development. I will modify the content type article. I will add a field. In this case, I will add a link. This will be external link. I will save and continue. Save field. Then I modify my content type. Right? Nothing special. This is pretty straightforward. Also, I am going to modify the content view. If I am going to edit, and I will introduce two changes. The first one, I will introduce a change about the type to be very specific about what type, content type I want to filter. No, entity type. So I will include, let me delete this, remove. I will add a filter, say type, content type. And they say will be article and basic, and we'll say apply. Okay. And now I am going to add a field. In this case, I am going to say this is external link. I have a typo. It's okay for now. I will apply, and now we have new field. And I am going to save. So using one of the commands available in the config, I will say I will run Drupal config export view. So which view? So first, you need to decide inside what folder you want to export the configuration. I will say Royal Challengers. Which view do you want to export? I want to export content. And they say your configuration must be optional or not. So if it's optional, that allows you to enable your model even if the model that uses the configuration is not available. So my recommendation is always use optional. And they say you want to include dependencies. I say yes. And now you could see we have more than one configuration file. So of course we have a view because we say we want to export, but you see we have also the storage, all the information for the link, and we have information about the content type, article and page, because I include in the filter. So in the future, if I modify the view, modify the content type, and I try to export again the view, then all the dependencies will be included. So with few clicks, you will have your feature. If we check the code, now we have a folder in Royal Challengers, which is config, and now it's optional, and we have all this general. So if I share this model to someone else and he enable, he will get the same configuration as me. So in Drupal we have several ways to apply changes. So maybe you can just override the configuration inside the server, but you can package in a model, and this is what feature it is, because in Drupal feature is basically UI, all the logic remains in configuration management, and we just provide a command to try to make this work easy for you in terms of calculate dependencies and everything. So I invite you to use to review all the configuration management commands. Cron. This is another kind of commands. Usually we have the cron in our system, but the problem with cron, if we depend on the hosting, sometimes the cron is executed sequentially. Sometimes our search is not updated. It's because the cron exceeds the amount of time or the amount of memory available in the server for execute the cron, so the search is never re-indexed. So we think about a possible solution. If you run the command cron debug, you will get the list of models that implement the cron. So this is the order how the system executes the cron. But maybe, as I say, maybe your search is never re-indexed and you want to execute that specific. So you just need to execute cron search, and now what the system should say is, I will execute the cron implementation for only for search model. Or you can provide a list of models you want to execute. So that's mean you don't need to rely in the cron. Some user visited your site to execute your cron. The problem is in the Drupal 7 we resolve this using two models. So this is a cron, which is not available in Drupal 8, and Ultimate Cron, which has a dev version in Drupal 8, but that relies in visitors in your website. With this, you can configure the cron in the server to execute these commands, and it's like you are doing a headless cron execution, which is more efficient and will be executed at the exact moment you want to execute your cron, and you don't depend upon memory or anything like that. In the same way, we have commands for update, because update is a little problematic in terms of the core implementation, because in a functional server, if you have many models, usually you have to update many models. And sometimes one model has a critical security issue that must be executed. But if another model has an issue in his update function, all the update process is aborted. So it's not possible to apply the update. Right? And this is a problem that faces everybody. Sometimes people hack the core to do this, disable some functions in the core or in the modules, just in order to be able to apply the security patch. So we provide a different solution. We have a command for this, but because this is a pristine system, we don't have any update function to execute. So I am using a generate update function to generate one update function. In this case, I am going to add 3 of them. If I visit the code, you will see in Royal Challengers now we have 3 implementations. As you see, it's easy because the idea of Drupal Console, you just need to put your business logic here. Okay? And if now I can use update the book to confirm what the books are not executed. And now I could do some specific stuff, like maybe I have many updates for the different models, but maybe I just say I want to execute the update A002 for the Royal Challengers. That enables you, and as you see, the previous update is automatically executed, so we don't allow to break the order. So in this case, maybe A003 have a problem, but using the specific, I could now execute at least the first 2. So that means that may allow me to run updates independently of the models, and inside the models I could apply all the functional updates available. So that helps you to try a more healthy system. In addition, recently, like 2 releases ago, we include another generator. This is generate post update. This generator creates a new file in your model, but basically in logic works the same as the update, but the post update is executed after all updates are executed. In theory, the logic is like we use the update to update our database structure or fields, and we use the post update to apply any different logic outside that database changes. So there are more actions to be created about what you need to do in production to change your environment. Okay, let's back to the presentation. We have create commands. Let me show you. I will go to the script again. So for instance, I am able to create nodes. I will say I will create 3 content types of articles. I could say I will create 4 comments in the node 11. I'm able to create new terms. In this case, he choose tags because it's the only vocabulary available. I could create users. In this case, 20 users with random creation date, and we have limit for all commands. In this case, I'm going to create 10 vocabularies. So these commands are mostly for dev environments that when we need some information to test, like we need content with comments, or we have people. Oops, maybe it's on the. Okay, this is something in the core, so they didn't like our server. But let me check if we could say that sum is okay. So we have the 10 vocabularies. So many of you, maybe you are thinking this is similar to debug generate, and it is. It's because all the functions to generate users, content, and everything, this is in core. In the same way, a feature is mostly UI, debug generate is mostly UI. So we do the same. We just provide the UI to collect the information and send information to the functions in the core, and the core do everything for us. So we are not doing anything created here. And the good thing is because if you have Drupal Console, you don't need to install one model for every instance in your systems. You just need to install one application, and then you get the possibility to create content in your in all your sites in Drupal 8. Let's move. Change. This is back to the tips. Change is one of the things we create to try to think out of the box. Why we say that is because we are trying to generate a way to transform our development process in a real process. So, for instance, let me go to my script. If I run Drupal change debug, I get a list of all examples we have about change. For instance, we have this YAML to create a form example. In this case, I have a function to generate a form. In this case, this is inside a model swaps. Let me change a little bit. Remember, I have royal challengers. So I say I want to modify this change to do this. So what the change do is I have a list of commands. In this case, the first is generate for configs. Config in what module? As an option, royal challengers, and I provide all the information like the class, the input, the services I need, and everything. So if you execute this chain as this command, generate for config, and then put generate chain, all this YAML is generated. So you just need to copy. So if you execute many commands and get many YAML files and put in one YAML file, you at the end you will get a big recipe to do whatever you want. So let me execute this specific command. I will say Drupal chain, and now I will execute the number 1. And now the for config was executed. So what that means? Let me check inside the code. Inside the code, now we have a form and we have a for config, and all this code was generated using the information we have in the chain. You see, we have a full form, we have integration with configuration management, and we have a routing. If I go to this URL in my Drupal, now I have a functional form. It's because now in my development process, I run a command to create this, and now I store this knowledge about how to create this specific form in a real process. And now we have a way to reproduce this really quickly. So Drupal Console accelerates your development process, but after you learn how to use the Drupal Console to do a lot of the job for you, you can reduce more the time you invest for that, because you can reduce all your process of development in this road. And what could be a chain could be anything, because we have a command, a chain for create data. If you see, the first one is to create data. That's what I did. So I run, and now we have a lot of users, a lot of command, a lot of taxonomy. But also we have, for instance, we have a chain to generate to run a Drupal 8 environment. For instance, we run the command sign new that is going to start in a specific directory, a Drupal with some specific version. Later on, you could run the site install using a specific database and a specific name and email and pass, and then you run the command server. So that means to test Drupal 8, you don't need virtual servers, you don't need Apache server or something like that. So all you need is a database. And even better, if you don't want to use MySQL because maybe it's not available in your system, if you have SQLite, you can use SQLite as your database and works totally properly. So that means you could have change to generate code, to install models, to download models, to start to install a complete system, to drop database, to update your system, to do everything. So, and remember, there is this not only this the Drupal console commands. You can also combine the commands implemented for third-party country models, or you can create your own commands. Let me change to the slides, no, to the script. Also, the change, you could define some environment variables, like with using a sport database, and those values, if we read this, let me show you real quickly the environment. So we just access the variable. So this is really important if you are trying to create a recipe for some system like a chef or Docker or Vagrant, whatever you want. So you can interact with the environment and try to create a really personalized recipe for your process. Okay, let's go. I will skip this in the demo, but it's available in the script. We have functions about database to run the client, to restore, get a list of tables, for instance. Let me run that quickly. I will say I have to create the database now. Okay, I will skip this. For code generation, since the Jesus presentation, we have a lot of new generators. This is a small list, but I want to show you a couple of things that maybe are really interesting for everybody. So the first one is generate plugin views field. So in Drupal 7, so in this, what this command generate is like an implementation of the Drupal 7 model views PHP. Because using views PHP introduces a level of insecurity in your website, and most people do that because in Drupal 7 do a specific plugin views is really complicated, but using this is really easy. As you see, I just implement, I have a view here, it's because the model have royal challenges. So, but the idea is we have this specific view to generate into the code. And when you use in the future, all you need to do is include the logic inside the field, and then your website will be secure. Okay. The second one could be if you want to generate a specific CK editor plugin, you just need to execute here and provide an icon and say yes, and then you get a CK editor button in terms of available for CK editor. Let me check it out if it works. If I go to configuration, test formats and editors, if I go to full HTML, you see this button. This is, I say, I love lamps, ribs, which is true. With no image, this is the specific CK editor button you did. So you just need to drag and drop, and will be available in your system. So obviously, again, you just need to extend this with your business logic, but that means you don't need to be worried about what classes, what namespace, or everything. You need to do this. This is functional, and you need to extend from here. So you just need to think about the business logic. We have commands, again, for get the image style, to flush of email styles. Obviously, flush is something is really risky to do in production in terms of performance, but it's available for you if you want. As you see in this change, we use that when we have the commands for site style, site debug, site import. We have maybe this new command for more some people. is to get Drupal statistics. If I run in my site, I guess like a little information about what is in my website. So, the amount of nodes, the amount of taxonomies, amount of things or model. This is good when you have to do an estimation. At least it's an extra information to try to get in mind how big or how small is a website. Okay, let's continue with the slides. We have a set of commands for state. State is different than configuration management because this is local configuration per environment, which has some information that is not possible to export about the environment, but you can modify locally to force. Okay. This is maybe something new in my data environment, my bug, but the idea is these states allow you to force some stuff in your environment. Okay, and we have others like plugin debug server. You already try and use plugin debugs to try to get more information about your system, like a Drupal plugin debug. So this is all plugins you could create in your system. Maybe the most popular are block and maybe field formatting, but all of them are available to create your own commands. Okay, this is about how to use the console. I want to use this slide to say thank you for all contributors in Drupal Console. Right now we have 178 developers that contribute with code, documentation, and so on in Drupal Console. So without their help will not be possible. Maybe you could recognize cron, who works in Platform SH, and Mohan, he works for Commerce Guides, and maybe another people around your community that help us to bring this product to you. Some implementation, Drupal Commerce, they use in their documentation and they are creating their own commands to work with the version for Drupal 8, Commerce 2 for Drupal 8. They trust the Drupal Console is the best solution for them. So you need to use Drupal Console if you are planning to use Drupal Commerce in Drupal 8. And other modules are meta tag, page manager rules, schedule date, and I hope if you are a model maintainer, maybe if Drupal Console is for you, maybe you can write an integration. And how I could help. So this is something we started yesterday. Right now we are in 1.0.0 beta 2, but there are some specific things we want to complete before to say we are in a stable version. We define the goals we want to have, like a dependency injection, isolation, support the composer, improve some configuration, include annotations, register command as a service, decoupling languages, and fix the migration. We want to have this for maybe DrupalCon Dublin or maybe for Badcamp in San Francisco. But with the amount of time we have right now, it's impossible because we need more hands. So how you could help? So we create a form where people could contact us to say, hey, I am an independent developer and I want to help in this specific goal. And we will be in contact with you to provide instructions to do that. Or if you are a company, if you could assign office hours for one or two developers, the same. You can choose what things you want to do and do that. So this is especially a claim for people who at least one day they use a console and was useful for them. Please help us to create a more powerful tool in order to get our release as soon as possible. And this is all I have. As again, my name is Eduardo Garcia, but everybody knows me as Enzo in the community. Remember in the first slide, you could find the full script to repeat all the instructions I did here. So and I am ready for questions if you have any doubts or questions.
Thank you, Enzo, for that really great presentation and for taking us through the very helpful demo. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners would be very excited to use all the tips that you have given on using Drupal console. So we have a couple of questions here with us right now, and I would also like to ask all our listeners to please type in any questions that you have so that we can take them up and Enzo can answer them as they come in. So the first question we have here is, will generate work for all image fields? You might have to unmute yourself before we can listen to you.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, we have generator for fields. An image is a type of field. Maybe you can use that as a starting point. But maybe you could take also a view about image effect and image formatter that affect field image. So at least between these three generators, maybe you could start your solution. And even better if you could extend generate looking field to be more specific for image, please contribute to the community.
Thank you. So the next question we have is, what would you say is the best or most productive feature of Drupal console?
It's the kind of each website. So a lot of people love the generation commands because that reduces the learning curve and the time you need to invest in development. But some people they love the functionality about config. Let me list all commands because we have some commands like to work with views or to work with YAML files, which is new. Some people love especially the state commands, and others they love. Let me find this about the site. For instance, if I am a developer, I do this like a site mode, and I want to enable site mode as a developer, so I get all the settings required to work as lookup. And if you want to put in production, I get this. But in general, the most beloved command is chain because people say it's a combination with features, with profile, with just make, and everything in one solution. And to be honest, this is my favorite.
Right. Next up, we have like how would the Drupal console help more people in adopting Drupal 8?
Well, if you have a review about Drupal 8 have a lot of new technologies, a lot of libraries from Symfony, from Zen, from a lot of another frameworks. So you need a lot of time to try to get involved with Drupal 8 changes. That doesn't mean Drupal is not a good product. Actually, it's a good product, but as a company of a developer, you need to learn a lot of technologies, and time, is money. So the idea of Drupal console is with generator, with all other commands, you just need to be concentrated in the business logic, not about, let me show you some code, not about, for instance, in circuit editor, not about what PS I need to use, PSR2 or 4, or what namespace I need to name, what use I need to use, what annotation I need to do. This is really time consuming. So in my metric, it's like if you are a Drupal 7 developer or you are new, at least you need about 6 months to be proficient in Drupal. And with the Drupal console, you could be proficient maybe in a month or less, but from the day one, you are already productive. You could generate a plugin, you could generate a form, you could generate a controller instead of to wait 2 or 3 months to be some results. And this is the whole objective for Drupal Console, to try to bring more people. And so, when I say even if you are a Drupal 7 developer, you need 6 months, it's because the change from 7 to 8 is too big. It's like a pass from being a, I don't know, a Java developer to be a .NET developer, right? Even if you know the syntax of the language, there is a lot of things you need to learn. So this is how we think we help people with Drupal to bring Drupal 8 in their company.
All right. So we have a couple of more questions coming in, and I would also like to once again ask all our participants that if you have any questions, please type them in, and we will be taking them up shortly. The next question we have is, will Create take care of any additional fields that we create in an entity? For example, will it add images to image fields and node refs?
Yeah, we have that right now for specific fields. Let me show you. Drupal is generate. So we have commands to generate entities, but we don't have commands to include fields inside. Well, we have, because you could create fields inside your code that could be reused in your content types, but we don't have yet a command to associate into the content type right now. It's not yet, but it's in our pipeline.
We have one last question here, and if any of our listeners have any more questions, please send them in. Now would be a good time to start sending them in. So this question is, how user-friendly is Drupal console for new developers who are starting with Drupal 8, like who do not have any previous knowledge of the earlier versions of Drupal, but who are just starting off with, let's say, Drupal 8?
Yeah, actually, Drupal console is from seniors to juniors, because if you imagine you have a person, maybe he only speak Hindi, maybe he don't speak English. This is in a hypothetical situation, and maybe you need to create a controller. So all you need to do to him is, okay, you need to go to Drupal console documentation in Hindi and go to the command generate controller. Okay, this is for example because it's not in Hindi, but you can read how the controller works. Let me find, and then you just need to follow the interactive mode. So I say Drupal generate controller. Okay, I will choose the royal challengers. I will say default controller. I will say my title. I will say my action is hello. My path is this. If I want to enter a new controller or not, enter. If not, if I want to include a test unit, I say yes. If I want to include services, I will say yes, and I will say maybe local factory and current user service. No more. I want to generate, and I get all this code from the option. This is my controller. And I get the routing. If I go to the routing, and now if I go to Royal, and I say Alexis. Now Royal. Sorry, yes, I have a typo here. Okay. So I have a controller. So the create a controller is really easy for a junior. He just needs to follow human questions, and then you will get code generated. So in 5 minutes, he could read about the command execute and get a functional code. Instead of maybe you say, this is a book, 600 pages, you need to learn about Drupal 8, and he could spend 2 or 3 weeks, and when he finished, maybe he is still not available to create a controller, right?
Okay. All right. So we have. I'll give our listeners another few minutes to send in their questions if they have any. And till then, we have this one last question with us that I would like to ask. So how and where does Drupal console fit in with Drupal 8's new focus on enterprise projects?
I don't understand the question, sorry.
So Drupal 8 right now is focused more towards enterprises and making Drupal into an enterprise solution, right? So where does Drupal console fit in that space?
Well,
Or how
yeah, okay. I think that point of view could be true and false at the same time. It could be true in terms maybe small companies, they can afford a very professional developer or engineer who is available to manage all the Drupal console, libraries, dependency injection, and everything. Obviously, that is something maybe an intermediate or big companies that could afford. But with the console, you could reduce that because I say a junior could generate code and interact with Drupal 8 with any specific knowledge. So that means that reduce that point of view, right? But at the same time, when people say it's like we have many advanced solutions, the idea is if you use all these professional technologies, you will get a very professional product. So my idea is like a console will reduce the need to have a lot of top level engineers to understand everything. So with the Drupal console, you can take advantage of almost everything, and probably you will become in a more professional developer or more professional company, taking all the advantages you have with Drupal 8.
Okay. Thank you for taking the time to answer all the questions that have come in. And I think with that, we have come to the end of our question answer session for today and the webinar. So I would like to thank all our attendees for being such patient listeners. And also, I would like to thank Enzo for taking us through this really helpful presentation. And we hope you all learned something and enjoyed the webinar. I would also like to announce that our next webinar is on scientific computation and data visualization with SciRuby. It would be hosted on the 29th of June 2016 and would be led by Sameer Deshmukh, who is a very passionate contributor to the SciRuby project. For registrations and more details, you would be getting a mail from us, so stay tuned. And thank you once again for joining us today, and we sure hope to see you in our next webinar. Thank you, Enzo, for joining us and leading us through this presentation.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for inviting me, Srijan.